Good evening. I just want to welcome you all to this evening's Organ Vespers. And I know each of you could have been somewhere else right now, but you decided to be here, and I think that's wonderful. Just a few housekeeping items. The bathrooms are not open in this church building itself, but if you arise to have a need, you can go to the fellowship hall, which is that direction through the breezeway. And also a reminder, the cell phones you might have, just make sure they're on vibrate, which I wonder if mine's on vibrate. That's checked. I heard about an instance in Sweden a couple weeks ago where somebody went to an orchestra concert and they had something they were eating, like some chips, and the guy next to him was very perturbed at that for some reason. And so he gave this woman a dirty look, and then when there was a lull in the concert, the woman got up and slugged him in the stomach. So I hope that doesn't happen here tonight. I've entitled tonight's program, The Gift of Thanks. And when you think about music, it's really a gift. I think about those of us that share music and composers that have composed music. And a lot of times initially they're not thinking about making money off of it. And a lot of times they're just writing something because they enjoy doing it. And it just so happens somebody listens to it and appreciates it. But we often take music so much for granted. You think about when you're going shopping in the mall, you got music going on. You go to the store to get some food, there's some music. And so when you think about being thankful for what we might take for granted, we often don't think about where the music is coming from. And tonight we have, I want to use the word plethora, which is like a large variety of composers from different periods. And most of them are no longer with us, and I'm so sorry to say. But there are some that are still living. But they have no idea that their music is sort of continued through the generations, and it's a legacy that we have to appreciate different styles of music. Tonight I'd like to dedicate this program to Bobby Murphy. And I got to know Bobby actually when he invited me to play clarinet in some of his organ, I call them Organ Plus concerts, because there's like organ, he always liked to have different instrumentalists and vocalists come. And some came from Southern California that knew him in college, and some came from other parts of California. But he was, at the time, he was a music director at a Lutheran church in Minnesota, and so he came home to Vallejo like a couple times a year, and he heard I played clarinet. He knew my sister in college, and he was like, Stan, you should come join me sometime. And I was like, well, sure. And that sort of started in the early 1990s, and we continued that pretty much through just a couple years ago, I guess. But what I loved about his concerts is they were variety, and this is something that I thought about when I planned this concert. I really don't give many organ concerts, or I have not. I guess I gave a couple when I got my minor in music in college, and as at PUC, I did a couple when I was there, and then when I came up to Walla Walla, I did a couple, and then there was a long drought. And when Melissa was talking about, what to share tonight, it was sort of like, there's so much to choose from. And that's sort of what I was thinking too. I know it's a cop-out, but there's so much music out there, and you're saying, okay, I have an hour to share music with friends and family and those who would like to come, and it's sort of like, how do you decide what to share? And I did give one 5 years ago at Presbyterian Church. I play at Celtic Cross, and I thought that it's good for musicians to share, and it's good for those to come and hear music as well. But Bobby, when he gave concerts, he always had an offering that he took up and gave it to the local food bank or community service or something like that, and I thought that was awesome. And he's been through a lot of health challenges lately. We're both cancer survivors, and that's another thing that resonated with him. His music means a lot to me, but also how he's fought through his health challenges. He had cancer at first, and then it went in remission, and now it came back, and right now he's serving 2 churches in Jamestown, North Dakota. And as you can imagine, music is your life, and then when something like cancer comes, it's sort of hard to keep going with that music. So he had to go to Fargo to get treatment, and now he's like back, and it just sort of messes you up. But a friend of his that I found on Facebook, she had this quote, and it really meant a lot to me. It says that no sun outlasts its sunset, but will rise again and bring the dawn. I think that's something we all can live for and live with. Is sometimes you think, your life is just so much different. It's hard to go from day to day, but you just know you just got to go day by day, and God will be with you throughout all your trials. Please join us as we sing this hymn of assurance, Savior like a shepherd lead us. I'd like to introduce to you musicians that are joining me tonight. You just saw Nina up here sharing the presentation of this opening hymn, Hymn of Assurance. And you can see a little bit more about us on the back of your program. But I just wanted to share a little bit about why we do something like this. I mean, music is pretty special, and especially me as an organist, it really is fun to collaborate with other musicians. And a lot of times I'm just playing the organ. Julie wonders where I'm going. I'm saying I'm going to the church. And she believes me. But a lot of playing the organ, there's ways to collaborate, and I think that's sort of the joy of this kind of program, is that I was looking at kinds of pieces that Nina and I could do together. And having a harp is even better to have that different kind of instrument to share as well. But Nina will be playing several pieces throughout, as well as Melissa on the harp. And it just made me think of, when I put these bios together, I just wanted Melissa and Nina just to think about how we came into playing music in the first place. Was it like our parent that said you must practice? Or was it something that we came aware of an instrument? As I shared a little bit about Melissa, just going to a wedding and hearing the harp, it just is so amazing. And with me, it was, going into my piano lesson in Temple City, California, and Mrs. Rosenthal was awesome to teach me piano, but she had the mistake of having an organ right beside the piano. And it just made me wonder what kind of sounds that thing could make, and unfortunately, by the time my feet got long enough to reach the pedals, we had moved away. So it wasn't until I was in high school. But Nina, the same kind of thing. She played violin and piano early on, and just by being involved in church music and being more involved in different kinds of groups, it just sort of was something she was enjoying and became more part of throughout her life. Melissa will be sharing a harp piece next, and I believe she wanted to just say a few words sort of to prepare us for the kind of music that she'll be sharing.
You probably don't need preparation for my music, but what I did want to say was when I found out that Sten was making this a Vespers of Thanks and a program all about thanks, and now we've just moved into the Thanksgiving season here in November, I started thinking about my 33 years playing the harp. In some years, just having the harp sit in my house thinking I should play the harp. But anyway, those years count too for me, so we're going to count them. And I started thinking of the people that I'm thankful for on this journey. And so the three pieces I've chosen tonight, all three I'm dedicating to people that I am thankful for. The first piece that I'm about to play for you is Toccata. And I'm dedicating that piece to someone I am so very thankful for, because it is the person who always carries my harp and loads it into the car. And that's my husband, Greg. When we were in college, before we were even dating, he followed me into the music building and listened to me practice. And when he heard this song, he said, "That's my favorite. You can play this for the rest of my life for me." And it just may work out that way. So the first one is for him. A little bit later on, I'll be playing Processional. That was my grandma's favorite song, and these are simple pieces, but my grandma loved my harp playing. She would sit on the front row of every recital I played. She would always come to church when I was playing the harp. She didn't normally come, but she would come if I was playing. And every time she came to visit, she would say, "Play me that song that goes brrrr." She died last spring, and when I went to say goodbye to her in the hospital, I brought my daughter's very small lap harp to play for her. And she was on heavy medication, and she was in and out of consciousness. And I can remember just playing for her, and I didn't know if she was listening or not. And when I stopped playing, she opened her eyes and looked at me, and she said, "You keep playing." In fact, one of the last things she said to me was, "Play me a simple melody." And so my second song is for her. And the third piece, the Lord's Prayer. This is my mother's favorite song, so I'd like to dedicate that to her. She's what made it possible, the 1-hour round trip every week to music lessons, the decorated harp-shaped cookies at all of my recitals, all the white dresses she made me play in at every Adventist church within a 100-mile radius of where we lived. And I'm not sure at that wedding, Sten, where I leaned over and asked if I would like to play the harp. I'm really not sure if first she said, "Would you like to play the harp?" And I said, "Yes." This is her dream as much as mine. And when I was a teenager, she used to trade me favors. If I would play this song for her, I'd say, "Mom, can you take me to the mall?" And she'd say, "Well, if you play the Lord's Prayer for me, I'll take you to the mall." And this song has followed me. It is the most difficult song, one of the most difficult songs I play on the harp, probably the most difficult one, and so I'm not quite sure why I chose it, but except for her, because she's watching and she's made this dream possible for me. So let me play for you Toccata now.
next part of our program is Dare to be a Daniel. And I played a portion of this piece when Melissa was announcing the Organ Vespers at church this morning. She was sort of saying that I've never played any of these pieces before. Well, I actually have played them before, but this particular piece is a piece that I have actually played before, but never with a narrator. And I'm so happy that Kent Van Cleve from Celtic Cross Presbyterian Church, where I serve as organist, was willing to be the narrator. And it just gives us a whole sense of the story of Daniel and how amazing he was. And also, it helps us understand the different sounds of the organ. Now, I know, when this church was built, I understand that the intent was to have a pipe organ here. And I know how that might have had a little different aesthetic view to people sitting out there in the congregation. But the intent of this organ is to make it sound as much as like a pipe organ. When I play, I think about the pipe organs I played here in America or in Sweden, and it just has a special sense of the sound that comes out of a real pipe. And it was funny, one time when I played the postlude here one time, someone came up and said, "Is this a pipe organ? I want to see the pipes." And I was like, no, it's not a pipe organ. But this is actually a pipe that my Uncle Malcolm gave to me on my birthday back in 1986, sorry, 85. I'm going back in years. But this is a pipe from the old Irwin Chapel organ at PUC, for those of you who might remember. And unfortunately, that was a very special chapel because that was the organ that one of the organists that played that was my Aunt Eileen. And my Uncle Malcolm has a funny story about how he got to know her better by messing with the blower and the organ and disconnecting it. And then she couldn't play for some reason. But he came in here and he came into this restaurant with my folks. They came out to Napa when I was at PUC, and he was playing this pipe. And I was like, "What is that?" Well, this is a flute pipe of the Irwin Chapel organ. And those of you, I share music every Friday night at home, and those of you might see the piano there, and it has this thing on the wall. And some people have sort of said, "What is that?" Well, this is actually the flute pipe from that organ. It sort of makes me think of the artistry that goes into making pipe organs. I think it's pretty amazing. The whole harmonics. My roommate in college, Tim Hansen, was really in tune with the whole mathematics of harmonics and how different pipes have different kinds of harmonics going with it and how to construct something like this. But I hope when I share this Dare to be a Daniel that you'll understand the different sounds the organ can make, and a lot of times they're sounds that we differentiate at one time or another, but a lot of times we sort of put them all together and sort of orchestral, and that's sort of what got me excited about playing the organ in the first place, is you can sort of incorporate all these different sounds like an orchestra. And it's just amazing how one person could have that kind of control with one instrument. So Ken Van Cleve, he's actually one of our new choir members at Celtic Cross. We had a choir of 18 last year, and he just moved down from Walla Walla, Washington, and now we have 24. And went through a really big recruiting effort in the summer, so he's one of the new recruits, and we're so happy to have him. Kent?
The organ has sounds that are divided into 4 families of sounds: the principals, the strings, the reeds, and the flutes. And when they are all combined, it is called a full organ. The principals are the main family of sound. This sound is only made by organ pipes. Principal pipes are round and are made of metal. The strings make sounds like string instruments such as the violin, viola, cello, and string bass. String pipes are also round and are made of metal, but are thinner than principal pipes. The reeds make sounds like the woodwind in brass instruments in a band or an orchestra, such as the oboe, clarinet, trumpet, and trombone. The sound is made by a little piece of metal called a reed, which vibrates when air passes by it. Reed pipes are round and are made of metal. They have a resonator at the top that amplifies the sound. The flutes make sounds like flutes and recorders. These pipes are often made of wood and are square. When all the sounds of the organ are combined, it's called a full organ. Each of the movements of Dare to be a Daniel uses one of these different families of sounds. They are played in the following order: full organ, principals, strings, reeds, flutes, and full organ. All of the movements are based on the same melody, Dare to be a Daniel. On the screen, you see the words and music of Dare to be a Daniel. Sten will play the melody. Now, will you please join in singing the words of the melody? As Sten plays through Dare to be a Daniel and plays each movement, see if you can recognize that melody in what he plays. Sometimes the melody or parts of it are in the hands, and sometimes he'll play it with his feet. It pleased King Darius to set over the kingdom 120 princes to rule throughout the whole kingdom, and over them 3 presidents, one of whom was Daniel. The princes gave account to the presidents so that the king might not suffer loss. Daniel distinguished himself above all of the other presidents by his exceptional abilities, and the king was planning to set him over the entire kingdom. Then the princes and the presidents began searching for grounds for charges against Daniel with regard to his conduct of government affairs. But they couldn't find any such grounds because Daniel was honest, faithful, and trustworthy. Then these men said, "We shall never find any basis for charges against Daniel unless it has some connection with the law of his God." Then the princes and presidents went as a group to the king and said, "O King Darius, live forever." All the presidents, governors, princes, and counselors have all agreed that the king should establish an ordinance and a firm decree that whoever prays to any god or man throughout the next 30 days, except to you, O king, should be thrown into a den of lions. Now, O king, issue the decree and sign it so that it cannot be changed, according to the law of the Medes and Persians, which cannot be altered. So King Darius signed the decree. When Daniel found out that the decree had been signed, he went into his house where his upstairs windows were opened toward Jerusalem. 3 times a day he knelt on his knees and prayed, giving thanks to his God just as he always had. Then these men went together and found Daniel praying and making supplication before his God. So they went to the king and reminded him of the decree. Didn't you sign a decree saying that during the next 30 days, anyone who prays to any god or man except you, O king, will be thrown into the den of lions? The king answered, the decree stands, and according to the law of the Medes and Persians, which cannot be altered. Then they answered the king, that man Daniel, one of the exiles of Judah, is paying no attention to you or your law that you have signed. He still prays 3 times a day. When the king heard these words, he was greatly distressed and was determined to deliver Daniel, and he labored until sundown to rescue him. Then the men again went to the king and said to him, remember, O king, that according to the law of the Medes and the Persians, no decree issued by the king can be altered. So at last the king gave the order, and they brought Daniel and cast him into the den of lions. The king said to Daniel, may your God, whom you serve faithfully, deliver you. Very early the next morning, the king hurried out to the den of lions. And when he came near to the den where Daniel was, he cried out in an anguished voice, Daniel, servant of the living God, has your God, whom you serve faithfully and continually, been able to deliver you from the lions? Daniel said to the king, O king, live forever. My God sent an angel and shut the mouths of the lions, and they have not hurt me, because I was found innocent before God. Nor have I ever done any wrong before you, O king. Then the king was overjoyed and commanded that Daniel be taken up out of the lion's den. So Daniel was lifted from the den, and not a wound was found on him, because he had trusted in his God. Then at the king's command, the men who had falsely accused Daniel were brought and cast into the den of lions, along with their wives and children. And even before they reached the bottom of the den, the lions overpowered them and broke all of their bones into pieces. Then King Darius wrote to all the people, nations, and men of every language throughout the earth, "Peace be unto you. I issue a decree that in every part of my dominion, people must fear and reverence the God of Daniel. For he is the living God. He endures forever. His kingdom will never be destroyed, and his dominion will never end. He delivers and he saves. He performs signs and wonders in heaven and earth. He has delivered Daniel from the power of the lions."
Before I challenge you with something, just wanted to take a little bit to thank everyone that has supported this Vespers in one way or another. First and foremost, to someone that isn't even on the thank you in the program, is Bryce Hickerson. He's been after me for years to do an Organ Vespers. And I realized it's not quite the way he envisioned. He said, just some nice, quiet organ music. And the whole program tonight wasn't exactly all quiet. But he just remembers just when Warren Becker used to play, and he had an Organ Vespers here a while back, and he says, we should have another one of those. So when I asked him what kind of instrument he would like to hear in addition to the organ, he said harp. So I just knew the right harpist in Melissa, so I'm glad she could play tonight. The way I organize these, as you can see, is not grouped in any kind of fashion. It's grouped in how long the title of what they did and their name, which really means a whole lot, because when you think about people, sometimes it's like, well, I do this or I do that. Well, we're all part of the whole, larger whole. So I think it's awesome that people were willing to support this Vespers program. Video, Jeff Blood. Thank you very much. There is some family and friends that Melissa and I had that were outside of the area that really didn't want to drive down here. So it's nice that we could live stream it, and it's also available for people that want to look at it afterward. And Deacon Dean Elias, I do have keys to the church, but being a deacon, that's a way above my level. So I appreciate him opening the church and making sure we know what bathrooms are open, and making sure the church gets locked after we leave tonight. Graphics, Victor Ramos. Last time I did a piano concert here and at Celtic Cross, and I thought I'd just do all the graphics myself. That was a big mistake. It does take a lot of work, and I do appreciate people that have that gift of artistry. You know, I could sort of find some things, and I work with Victor to sort of have some content, but as far as making it look all beautiful, I appreciate all he did. Page Turner, SUNY Color. Yes. I hate page turners. During the church service, I try to have as many pages copied as possible. And often, the nice blower here blows my music in certain ways. And I'm reminded how much of a gift SUNY is to agree to turn my pages, because it really is something I don't have to think about. Audio, Jeff Robinson, Steve Hahn. Audio is the kind of thing where you don't think about them until something goes wrong. And they were awesome to set up the mics, and they're really attentive to try to figure out, harp, he was saying, a lot of times he does harp with orchestra, and it's like the brass is playing loud, you try to balance out the harp. But this is a little different tonight because, just a harp is a solo instrument, trying to understand how best to amplify that and make that perfect for this room. So thank you, Jeff and Steve, for all your work. Pastors Keith Jacobson and Bob Ewell. I mean, how often does someone have two pastors? Pastor Jacobson has been awesome here at Carmichael to allow us to use this space tonight, and has been coordinating with me as I plan this program, trying to have the right balance of intent and something that people can relate to. And Bob Ewell is my Sunday pastor, and you think I'm doubly blessed having 2 sermons a week. Imagine that, but they're awesome pastors, and they've been both a great support to me in my ministry, and as well as the music that I share each week, so thank you. On the reception, Julie Bolander, amen, and Eileen Silva. When I was thinking about how nice it might be to do a reception, she didn't really wait till I thought of who might be willing. She just said, I can take care of that. And Eileen's awesome to be part of that team. Public Relations, Kimberly Jones is the secretary here at Carmichael, and she was awesome to get the word out to area churches. To be honest, PR isn't really my thing. And being a musician, a lot of times we don't want to think about, please come to my concert. And, it's awesome that we have ministries in our church that support different kinds of of music and children's ministries, and there's so much that churches offer, but it's great that we have secretaries like Kimberly can sort of get the word out to different churches. And Kristen Zeman, she's the secretary at Celtic Cross, and she's the one that made the flyer that you see in the back, and I didn't realize you put them on the back of bathroom stalls too. But whenever you might have gone to a bathroom that was working, you might have seen that. But when I was planning this program, Kristen she's always doing things that she doesn't ask for approval to do, which is amazing because sometimes she's just like, gotta have this for the newsletter. And then I sort of forget about it, and then I look on the wall and there's like an announcement that she just made up. And I said, where'd you get that? And she does a lot of things on her own. It's just awesome how her gift of ministry is able to support the music efforts. Our collaborative musicians tonight, Nina Negretti, Melissa Howell. It wouldn't be the same if I didn't have other musicians to share this with, and it made a lot of fun to make music together. And I know it takes more time, and I know it's not our first rodeo. We've done music before, but just finding time to just get together, it just means a lot that Melissa and Nina made it a priority to share music tonight. And the greeters were awesome tonight. I really appreciate Trevor and Judy Kane and Dylan and Stephanie. And they did so good, we ran out of programs. I mean, they gave everything away. So I appreciate them fulfilling that need. It's great to have someone out there as people come into the church. I want to invite all of you to a reception afterward. And typically we close with a spoken prayer, but Melissa's going to be sharing the Lord's Prayer in music. And as far as a closing challenge, I just want us all to consider how we might want to think about just being thankful in all things. I think about Bobby Murphy, who I've think about all the time, not only when I'm doing music, but just the challenges he has. And it's hard to be thankful sometimes, and I know we each have challenges in our own lives that we might not make known to other people, but it's great if we'd be part of a community that supports each other and a God that really looks out for us. So if we can keep that in mind. So as we close this program, this next piece is from Mendelssohn's Organ Sonata number 6, his last organ sonata, and it's sort of different how a lot of times the last movement is something loud and fast. Well, this is more subdued. So this will be preceding our musical prayer. And as Melissa ends, Nina and I and Melissa will be going to the back as you follow us. So thank you all for coming.
you.